Today, we will discuss one of the most important works ever written on Roman rhetoric.
Yes, one of the most important works written on the history of Roman rhetoric is George Alexander Kennedy's book, The Art of Rhetoric in the Roman World.
We previously reviewed George Alexander Kennedy's book, The Art of Persuasion in Greece.
Roman rhetoric developed from the ancient Greek tradition, but there are differences.
Yes, in ancient Greece, there was direct democracy with a limited number of citizens. All processes were based on people convincing each other through discussion. In Rome, however, whether during the Republic or the Empire, rhetoric was for a narrow segment of the population. During the Republic, it was a tool used in the Senate and judicial processes. During the Empire, it was used to educate and refine the ruling class. But it was always part of education.
Let us return to our source and examine the journey of rhetoric in Rome with its social functions.
Okay, let's unpack this. When you think ancient Rome, you probably picture legions, emperors, maybe the Colosseum, right?
Definitely grand architecture, powerful figures.
But what about the power of, well, words? Today we're doing a deep dive into Roman rhetoric. It's a fascinating story, how it went from something pretty basic to this really refined art form.
And sometimes quite theatrical too.
Exactly. So our mission here is to kind of map out those key changes, the big figures, and give you a shortcut to understanding this well. Really central part of Roman culture.
Sounds good. Where do we start? Early days.
Yeah, let's start there. Before things got formalized, our sources suggest persuasion in early Rome wasn't really about clever arguments. It was more about, your family name, status, wealth, authority matter, right?
You're standing in the community. It was paramount. But what's really interesting, even back then, is how they still used stories. Think about Menenius Agrippa, his fable, The Belly and the Members. It's famously told in a pretty unpolished style, apparently.
Right? The story about the body parts rebelling against the stomach.
Exactly. And he used that simple, relatable metaphor to sway the plebeians. It wasn't complex logic, it was narrative power. Saint to the point. A powerful story then. And we also hear about figures like Appius Claudius Caecus, his speech against making peace with purists back in 280 BC. It was remembered for ages.
Absolutely. Even though we don't have the exact words, its impact was legendary. Shows you the power of a well-timed, forceful speech.
So how did that raw, persuasive power start getting, more sophisticated?
Well, the big shift. The real game changer that was Greek influence seeping in.
Right, Greece.
It wasn't just about adding a bit of Polish. It fundamentally changed how Romans thought about speaking, turning maybe crude demands into something more like subtle persuasion in art form. Really.
So Greek ideas brought the artistry. Who were the first big Roman names to really grab onto that and, make it Roman?
Cato the Elder is definitely key. We think of him as the stern traditional statesman, but he was actually the first major Roman order in rhetorician.
Really? I didn't know he wrote about it.
Oh yeah. He even included rhetoric
In the first Roman encyclopedia he compiled. And what's fascinating, really captivating detail is that he apparently edited his own speeches.
edited them. How so?
To maximize the emotional punch for Romans, often the speaker's character, their ethos, and hitting those emotional notes. Pathos that often carried more weight than, say, a super intricate logical argument.
Okay, so character and emotion were huge, and they had actual techniques for this, didn't they? I've heard about the memory palace.
Absolutely. That was a standard part of rhetorical training. It's quite ingenious, actually.
How did it work? Basically,
Orators would mentally place key parts of their speech in familiar locations, like rooms in their house. These were the loci or backgrounds. Then they'd associate vivid mental images with each point.
like picturing a sword in the doorway to remember a point about war.
Exactly. Or maybe a crying child in the corner for an emotional appeal. It was this highly visual system for managing a ton of information while speaking. Very practical.
Wow. Okay, so we've got Greek influence figures like Cato adapting at practical tools like the memory palace. This leads us into Cicero's time, right? The so-called Golden Age.
Precisely. Cicero's era is seen as the pinnacle. He mastered what the Romans called the three official oratorists,
Which were
winning sympathy from the audience, proving your case, the truth aspect, and stirring up their emotions. And Cicero was just incredibly adaptable.
That's what stands out, isn't it? His flexibility?
Totally. Look at his career, prosecuting someone corrupt like Verres, then turning around and defending a governor like Fonteius. He used completely different tactics depending on the situation, the audience, everything. A master camellia.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing, was it? I remember reading about Crassus, another famous orator, trying to shut down Latin rhetoric schools.
Yes, in 92 BC. That's a really revealing moment. Crassus worried these schools were just breeding shameless self-confidence, as he put it.
Meaning
They were teaching technique, maybe style, without the deep knowledge or moral grounding he associated with the more established learned Greek traditions. He saw it as potentially dangerous.
that sounds surprisingly modern, like debates we have now about spin versus substance.
It really does. The tools change, the context changes. But that tension between skilled persuasion and genuine substance or authenticity seems pretty constant.
So what happened then? As the Republic faded and emperors like Augustus took over, political freedom shrunk. Did that kill oratory?
Not exactly kill it, but it transformed it with fewer genuine high-stakes political debates in the Senate or Forum. That kind of classical oratory declined.
Okay, so where did that energy, that skill go?
Well, partly it shifted. You see a kind of new rhetoric expressed through things like imperial art and architecture. Augustus was brilliant at using statues, buildings, coins to project power and messages.
Visual rhetoric makes sense.
And spoken rhetoric found a new home, a new life in the declamation schools.
Declamation schools? Tell me about those. That sounds different.
It was quite different. These became hugely popular. Students would practice arguing these elaborate, often totally imaginary legal cases. They call them controversy.
Imaginary cases.
Yeah. Or they tackle historical what-ifs. The soiseauria. Like, should Cicero apologize to Anthony to save his life? Wild scenario sometimes.
So not really about winning real cases or swaying real policy anymore.
Pretty much. It became more an exercise in pure style and linguistic dexterity. Maybe even a kind of intellectual game or emotional catharsis. A safe space to practice being clever and passionate without real-world consequences.
It sounds like style started to overshadow substance.
That's a perfect way to put it. And this shift is captured brilliantly, I think, by Hermogenes, later Greek rhetorician. His definition of rhetoric, it's striking.
What did he say?
He defined rhetoric as the art to say small things, grandly grand things, cutely novel things, antiquely and antique things, novelry.
Wow, that really sums up that move towards style. Almost as in itself, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, yeah. From persuading people on vital issues to, well, performing artistry with words.
So there we have it. Quite a journey for Roman rhetoric from those early authority-based appeals and simple fables.
Right through the sophisticated Greek-inspired techniques mastered by Cato and Cicero.
And finally landing in those declamation schools where it became this very stylized, almost theatrical art form.
We can add to this book review that the influence of Roman rhetorical theory continued after Rome.
Yes, the influence of Roman rhetoric continued even after Rome fell. Can we say that there is continuity in the history of rhetoric?
Of course. Roman rhetoric developed based on the theories of Aristotle and the Sophists, while Renaissance and Enlightenment rhetoric developed based on the rhetorical theories and critiques of Cicero and Quintilian.
It was truly an important resource. If our viewers are studying the history of rhetorical theories, we recommend they look at the works of George Alexander Kennedy in particular.
Yes, as we close the program, let us wish you all days filled with books.